Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Ozymandias? I think I say his name wrong. Or Ozymandias? I don't know. Ozymandias is a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley. It was written in 1817 and it is a sonnet. I really like doing sonnets, apparently. This is a bit of a weird sonnet. The rhyming scheme here is A, B, A, B, A, C, D, C, E, D, E, F, E, F. So instead of being set in the octave, the first 8 lines, and the sestet, the last 6 lines, it's a kind of fading rhyme scheme, where slowly the new rhymes replace the older ones. And what's going on in this poem? The narrator is retelling a story that he has heard. So we're not actually hearing this story from the point of view of anyone who has seen the statue. We're being told it second hand. It opens with, I met a traveller from an antique land, and that is such a wonderful phrase, antique land. You hear the word antiques and if you're me, you think of crap television and Antiques Roadshow. I love Antiques Roadshow. Bargain Hunt, your granny's side cupboard. But somehow saying antique land, and I'm not thinking of naff bits of china and pottery, I'm thinking of something with a whole lot more history and heritage behind it. So this traveller, who we never get to meet, we just hear this story secondhand through the narrator of the poem. The traveller saw 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone. Immediately your mind just starts conjuring these images. How big are they? Well, they're vast. They're towering above you. And then there's more. So they're stood up in the desert, in the middle of this nothing wasteland. But near them, there's some broken bits of face. And even though the face is broken and half buried, you can still make out the personality of the person who was being portrayed. You can see the sneering lip, you can see the frown, you get the idea of the cold command that this person exuded. It's not the looker who can see this, it was the sculptor. The sculptor, all those thousands of years ago, looked at the person they'd been hired to portray. They saw a sneer of cold command. They saw a wrinkled lip and a frown. And that's how they chose to represent this person, who's long dead, who's gone, who, for all we know, could have been Father Christmas incarnate. But that's not how they're remembered. Because this sculptor came along who maybe didn't like them very much. Maybe the sculptor had something against them. It says in the poem, the hand that mocked them. And that's the hand of the sculptor that's being talked about there. And the sculptor is coming in and he is mocking the person he's portraying by deliberately giving that sense of grandeur and arrogance and total power and control into those features, which is quite a subversive thing to do. It's supposed to be that Ozymandias, who tells us he is king of kings, he's supposed to be the one with all the power, but actually it's the sculptor, the humble artist, who really is the powerful one here. The sculptor had to get paid, he had to eat. Antique lands, you piss off the dictator, there's a good chance you're going to have your head chopped off. Ozymandias was obviously happy with this portrayal. He was happy with the idea of people seeing him as this powerful, commanding, sneering presence. And that also comes across in the pedestal. Ozymandias, king of kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. What an arse! Can you imagine inviting somebody round to your house and just standing in the corner and going, yes, look at my living room. Isn't it fabulous? It's better than yours, you know. You wouldn't. But that's what he's done. And then comes the real kicker. He said this, he said, look at my works. Everybody come out and see how powerful I am. And all there is to see is sand. The man is gone. He died centuries ago. The sculptor is dead. All those grand works, that fabulous city he'd built, gone. All of it lost to time. But what survives is a little bit of the art and the idea that the art can represent. So if you think about this poem as being who has the power, is it Ozymandias, king of kings? Or is it the sculptor? Is it the traveller who's gone out and looked and found these things centuries later? So there's a little bit of irony there by the end of it as well. All of the arrogance of this great king, all of the power that he did have to have this huge sculpture of himself erected, and it's still just all turned to dust. So this poem was written in 1817, and a few years before that, a huge statue of Ramses II had been uncovered in Egypt, an antique land full of sand. But people in the early 1800s really were into their archaeology. It was a very fashionable topic of conversation. The newspapers covered it heavily. If you were an archaeologist in the early 1800s, you were basically a rock star. You'd be invited to talk to people, to come to their dinner parties and to give after dinner speeches. You'd be interviewed by the newspapers, and you'd be able to tell your stories about these things that you'd seen. So although the statue of Ramses II hadn't made it to England and to the British Museum yet, Shelley would have heard about it. He probably would have met people who had been to Egypt and had seen some of these things, and that's probably what inspired the story. How much power does the narrator in the poem have? And how much do you think the traveller had? You know, the traveller has turned up and he's told the narrator, I saw, with my 2 eyes, I went into the desert and I have seen 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone. We only have his word for that. And he says that he could see a frown and a sneer of cold command on the shattered face of the statue. But we don't know. He doesn't have a photograph to share, and maybe it was just the way it caught the light. But it doesn't matter, because now, in our mind, we've heard this story, and so when we hear the name Ozymandias, we think arrogant king of kings. There's power in that as well. It's a nice message, I think, to be reminded that politics doesn't last. Politicians don't last. Art does. This poem was written 200 years ago. In 1817, Lord Liverpool was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. James Madison was President of the United States of America, and at that time, the United States only had 15 stars on its flag. How many times do you talk about a speech Lord Liverpool gave? Or look at the writings of James Madison? I could be completely wrong there. That could be something that American school children do every Friday at 2 o'clock. But Shelley's written a poem, and the poem survives. The ideas he expresses in this sonnet live on. The man is dead. Ozymandias is dead. The sculptor is dead. Percy Shelley is dead. but the things they created, we can still talk about them. If you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up, and if you didn't, well, I don't need to know. If there's anything you disagree with, let me know in the comments. If you really enjoyed it, hit subscribe, and I'll be back soon.